Hey fellow campers and van lifers, overlanders and so forth. Let me get in a little more to my cabinetry. I know some of you asked about the cabinetry. It's pretty self-explanatory when you look at it. Let me go into a little more details why I did this way. It may seem very counterintuitive that I made my cabinetry in my van out of aluminum and plastic instead of wood. And I'm going to talk about why I did that in this video. And I've, over the years, built much or most of all my own furniture in my house, and by no means am I a craftsman, but I try to be. And I built a lot of things out of wood over the years inside my homes, and like I said, even furniture, and try and take my craft of woodworking to a higher level. And I specifically chose not to use wood in this van. And for the most part, really, even future vehicles that I'm going to build, my future camper that I've been planning, which I'm going to go into more on that in a future video here. So let's talk about this van and why I did not build my cabinetry out of wood. So here are the reasons why I did not want to use wood. One is it absorbs odor, it absorbs moisture, it obviously can rot if it gets wet. And water can certainly be hidden in a van. You can have a water leak, any kind of camper, you can have a water leak anywhere that can manifest and build up. And matter of fact, Outliers Overland just did a video post recently where they talked specifically about that. They had a water leak they did not know about, and it was a small, trivial little leak, but that water over time rotted wood and caused not just the wood to rot, which was a subfloor, which imagine that. Now, if you've got a rotted subfloor, you pretty much got to do a almost deconstruction of your camper for at least a section of it to get to that subfloor, and that's a critical structural piece to the whole entire camper build. Not only that, but of course mold and fungus and stuff like that can grow on that wood. It is, of course, flammable, can certainly catch on fire, especially even more so after it's been stained or treated in some way, which always wood is when you're putting into a camper, almost always. And when you work with it, you have sawdust to deal with, and sawdust is not only flammable, it's actually incredibly explosive. Do a search on wood factories blowing up, literally blowing up. It is, as a dust, it is incredibly explosive. And so as a woodworker, I know that, and it also causes respiratory issues. So when you work with it, you've got all the sawdust that builds up, and so it does become a hazard, a health hazard, and also call it a hazard in a vehicle, and hence why it's not even really used a lot in boats anymore, because obviously of the fire risk and things like that it can add to a small enclosed space that you don't want to have a fire in. And so all those reasons. Also, structurally over time, it does degrade, hence it reduces its structural strength. And so cabinetry, like this cabinet here, if I yank and pull in this cabinet, which you can't even see me yanking and pulling on that, but you notice all it does is rock the van. You hear no squeaking, you hear no movement. I mean, let's see if I can pull on this. I'll pull this all I might, you can probably see. And nothing's moving, nothing's squeaking, nothing's loosening up. There's no fastener loosening up or anything like that. And so this 80-20 is incredibly strong. I call it extruded aluminum. There are many brands of it. 80-20 is the most common brand, but it is incredibly strong, and it does create a really nice platform for being able to attach things. And so it was really my first project with it, so I learned a lot while doing it. And I overbuilt this cabinetry to make it way stronger than it needed to be. This is the 1-inch profiles. That's all I used in the van. It is way more than adequate. I see no reason at all to use anything more than 1-inch profile for cabinetry in a van. There may be benefits to using a 1.5-inch profile or another larger profile 1-inch, but I think structurally not. You know, if it needs more structure, you just add more pieces. You don't need to necessarily go to a bigger piece. The downside of a bigger piece, like a 1.5-inch, if you've got two vertical pieces that frame a cabinet and you have drawers in between those, at 1.5 inches, you've now reduced that width of that cabinet by a whole entire inch, because it's 1.5 inch on each side versus 1 inch on each side. So you just reduced your available space for drawers or cabinet within that framing by a whole inch. Well, a whole inch in a that may not sound like much, but in a van that is a lot. You don't have that much space. It seems like an enormous vehicle. It's not. Realize a standard 144-inch wheelbase Sprinter is the same width and length as a crew cab Toyota Tundra. And so it is really not that big of a vehicle when you think about this whole entire tier. It is 14.5 feet long in this 170-inch wheelbase from the back of the doors up to the back of the front seats here. That's a lot of length, but still, it's not that much width or height by the time you start adding cabinets in and building this in, especially when you add a queen bed in the back, which takes up half of the space, underneath my bike garage, which takes up the other half of the lower space. That only leaves me half of that space now for my passenger seat that does rotate around so passengers can face forward, as well as all of my cabinets for the kitchen. I have an indoor shower. I have an outdoor shower, of course, on both sides here at the slider and at the rear, each with hot water as well. But I also have a big fridge, a big freezer. I have, obviously a sink, a stove, a microwave, a toilet. There's a whole lot of stuff that takes up space that doesn't leave you a lot of space left for clothes or food or things like that. So this is why I did 80-20 for my loom framing. It's non-flammable. It won't corrode or erode down over time. It won't rot out. It won't absorb moisture or odors, which if you're cooking in a van or whatever, you got smelly clothes in after a while, eventually those odors will get absorbed into things that can absorb it. And so this stuff doesn't absorb any moistures at all or odors. And also, you notice I have HDPE or high density polyethylene plastic facing also. That's only in 1/4 inch. It is more than strong enough at 1/4 inch, plenty strong for any cabinet facing or drawer facing or anything like that. And it is pretty much indestructible. I mean, you look at this face of this cabinet here, you can't really, it's almost impossible to scratch. I've taken a knife a couple times accidentally across the face of these cabinets because you're cooking, you just have to scrape. If that were wood, it would have been scraped and would have had to take it off and sand it down and refinish it. It would have been a lot of work, create all that dust and everything else, and the hazardous dust of sanding off chemicals on the finish and then applying that finish. This, I did not have to apply any finish at all. I didn't have any dust cutting it. None. There's no sawdust or plastic dust. It just kind of like breaks up in little chips and falls to the ground or gets sucked up into your vacuum system. And it cleans up really nice on these edges. Let me show you a little bit here so you can see. There's just a 1/4 inch rounded edge. You can see it's really nice and clean and smooth. From the facing of it, it has a really nice look. You can see right here too, I have one that's recessed into the 80-20 track here, a 1/4 inch piece. And I did that intentionally because I have these switches here and this outlet here. They're now flush with this framing. And so I did that way to have them recessed in, and this is not something I need to remove. These drawers, meanwhile, are an overlay face, overlaying the cabinet. Whereas these drawers down here are, I guess that's a flush or recessed drawer framing. So they go right into this space. I like the looks of that better, but I was trying with different things as building it. So anyways, that's why I did it. The HDPE is made from recycled milk jugs. Generally it uses outdoor playground equipment or also for boat decks, the cabinetry on boat decks and things like that, even the holes for carrying fish on fishing boats. So it is indestructible. It's actually food safe. This is the same product that's used as your plastic cutting boards. It is HDPE. It is food safe. So even if chips were to come off, you're to cut into it, it's antibacterial, so it won't allow bacteria to grow in there. So hence it's safe as a cutting board, and also the plastic is not considered to be hazard or toxic in any way. Your body can't break it down. So that makes it a really safe material. It's also non-combustible. It's light, it's incredibly strong, it's easy to machine and tool. Same with the aluminum profiles, which are also easy to machine and tool, and there's tons of connectors to connect all kinds of stuff together. So from a cabinetry perspective, it makes for a bomber cabinet. I mean, there's gonna I pull on this handle here. Let me show you another little thing that I can show you for strength. This is my bed, right? Whee! I can just do this. I can do pull-ups. Off of that, it is super strong, right? Any creaking you hear there is only because of the bed slightly sliding or moving in its linear track there that I use to keep it tracking up and down. So it is a very strong bomber material. If this bed frame were made of wood, I would not probably feel comfortable doing pull-ups on it in that same way with something, you could, but wouldn't be as strong. If I have a water leak in here, it's not going to hurt anything. There's no wood down low. The only wood is the wooden countertop right here. That's it. And a couple of drawers, those are wood as well. So it's not gonna hurt anything. I even went so far as like my mirror here, this is actually a plastic mirror. I was concerned that what if I got in a really bad accident, this broke, I had shattered glass going around. So there's a plastic mirror. My ceiling here, I've talked about before in a past video, but you'll see this is actually a different plastic. This is an acrylic, and so it's incredibly strong. It is used as bulletproof glass material or other things like that, but also allows this light through in this thinner profile. So it's really nice, and I can use it as a dry erase board too and write on it. It also allows light to come through, as I pointed out in another past video, from both above, as I did here, and below. And this cabinet up here, by the way, I use this to actually throw roller bags and stuff up on. Big duffel bags, roller bags. It doesn't really scratch. It's incredibly durable when bags land on here and sit on here, and so it's really great. Going back to, this is also that perforated PVC that I've talked about before, which is super strong, and this also allows me here to have some ventilation that cuts through here for the top of the fridge, for the microwave, all that, so I can enclose that stuff in and not have to worry about like that being all trapped in without ventilation. So it works really well for lots of things. And you notice, you can probably see here, it may be a little dark, but even these are my fan speed controllers for my front and rear fan coils for my heating system. These are even recessed in, right? Because of the way these knobs came, I was able to recess them in just partially and yet still attach them to this. So it allows for this knob to rotate perfectly fine and yet still be recessed in partially. Really wonderful stuff to work with. It's super durable, and so that's why I did my cabinetry out of aluminum framing and plastic parts instead of wood. By all means, I know it can have kind of an industrial look. There are today now more of these HDPE products that are in a wood toned or wood grained product, which is great. There are also other similar synthetic wood products that can look really great. When I built this van back in the 2016-2017 time frame, those were not available, so I went with the best I could. This plastic was actually used for playground equipment. That's how indestructible. It's for outdoor playground equipment. It works out great. I'm really happy with it because it is light, it's strong. It's not going to be a problem at all over its life. So this will last for really the life of the van probably. And it'll take dogs scratching up against with their claws. It'll take, you know, kids rubbing up against it with something sharp or a knife hitting it. And you don't have to worry about it getting damaged and then have to refinish it or getting rotted out. So that's why I did my cabinets this way. So by all means, ask me any questions if you have any questions. Certainly get out there and camp. Look forward to sharing more with you soon.